Music attorney, Miss Crystal, and today we are getting into a ton. Now, of course, we are tracking along with the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. We have had 2 additional days since our last live stream of trial coverage, and so we have like 16 hours to unpack and synthesize. Now, we have some other stories that we're going to hit before we get into all of that. And let me just give you a quick agenda of what we're covering today. So, we have a story we're going to cover in regards to Halsey, the singer and artist, and a battle that she's having with her record label. This is going to be interesting if you are an artist, if you're a songwriter, or just kind of interested in entertainment news in general and learning how this stuff works. And when you hear that artists are very upset about their music not getting released or having control, how does that work and why is that happening? We're going to get into all of that. We're also going to talk about Stan Lee's right of publicity. And of course, the use of his name and likeness, and the fact that, well, we're going to be seeing a whole lot more of him in the decades to come. Kanye's back in the news, and it's for good things this time. And there may be allegedly a collaboration with McDonald's. And we have a story in regards to the sale of a Kurt Cobain guitar. So there's a lot we're going to hit. Now, before we kind of get into all that, I'm letting you guys kind of filter in because, as always, you in the chat, hello. We have the live stream going out to the YouTube land, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all of your comments are being fed directly to me. So if you guys have any questions, as always, I want your engagement. The chat is my favorite place to be during these live streams. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Hi guys, I'm top music attorney, Miss Crystal. I'm an entertainment attorney, public speaker, and creator of the Top Music Attorney School for artists and record labels. I'm the owner of Dukes Up Records, and most importantly, I'm an independent artist. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on those bell notifications so you don't miss my weekly videos giving you my best tips on the music business, industry news updates, and teaching you how to stay legally protected. All right, I see you guys filing on in. Hello. Thank you for being here. You made it onto the live. Yes, you know what? I haven't really been promoting this on my socials, which are obviously some of my biggest platforms. But what we're going to be doing in, the coming days is kind of getting into this and touching base every single day. Right? So we've been going live and trying to do this like 2 times a week. And, I think that as far as kind of building our community here, that's a really important thing that I've been pushing for. We push out so much content and educational stuff and newsy stuff, but it's really important to me to get to know you guys and really build this community. So my show producer and I, who, by the way, my show producer, that Orca, will be on the show later today. We're probably going to be going live again tomorrow. I think we're talking about 7 p.m. PST, so be sure to check back for that. Now, as a side note, totally random, but I got a new hair curler. Okay, we're going a little off track for a second. And I'm noticing that I kind of set my hair and I pinned it up, and I'm trying to be professional here because I rarely do my hair and I'm so busy. Who has time for that? I was like, we're going to do the hair today. And I got a little swoosh thing happening, but I'm finding that the swoosh keeps going in my eye. So if you find me continuously moving the hair out of my face, that's why. But I appreciate you guys being here. And then as a quick, little promo, we did release a video on this channel. The last video that we released is more in the educational realm for artists, and it's having to do with a call that my law office gets a lot. You guys know I'm a real life entertainment attorney, and I do a lot of music as well. And so a call that I get from artists will be, hey, I don't know whether I should take this record label deal, whether I should stay independent. So basically, the summary of that video was comparing the pros and cons between going down either path. Because I represent very successful independent artists. I represent very successful signed artists with big labels. And there are definitely pros and cons with going both ways. So if you missed that, be sure to check it out. And I guess in other little newsy things, let's check in with you guys. So I've been kind of recording some music. I am also a musician. I release my music stuff on Miss Crystal Live, on all of the socials. And so we've been finally getting back into the studio. And something that I've been working on is just kind of getting over some, vocal issues. I went to the doctor. He said everything's okay. That's great. And so now I'm building up that strength, but I'm finding that, especially if we end up going live 5 days a week and that becomes the schedule, I'm going to have to get it together. So here we are. All you guys are very, very, very kind. Yep, we're going to be getting into all of the trial updates and things having to do with the last 2 days of trial for not only Amber Heard, right? So she concluded her case in chief and rebuttal started. So this is the portion in the case where basically Depp gets to go again. And now Depp's bringing up his witnesses to counteract the testimony that we've heard from Amber Heard's team. So we're going to talk about all of those witnesses and a lot of the experts. Hello to Vancouver. Thank you for being here. Sound design, production engineer, AI, super freak. Yeah, so guys, in kind of fun, lawyerly stuff that I've been up to, I'm doing a lot of deals, right? So, I'm constantly doing deals, transactional deals, and I'm in the trenches every single day, and we're fighting and we're negotiating, and then we have to paper it, right? So we have to then draft the contract, review it, make sure everything is as the parties agreed to. And, one of the deals we're doing is in the millions and millions of dollars. So it's a big deal, but it's interesting to see how a lot of these deals are very similar, but how kind of your strategy makes a big difference on how fast it goes, right? Sometimes it's the difference of like $1 million in negotiations because they want to do this and we want to do that. So it's a lot of fun. But, when it comes to kind of if you are the business doing these deals, if you are the artist or the record label, you definitely want to have representation. Love learning. Hey, love teaching. And that's the purpose of Top Music Attorney. The Netherlands. Very nice. All right, so be sure to drop any questions that you guys have, any comments, but we're going to jump now into the news segment, and I'm going to bring in my show producer, That Orko.
Hello, 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 hello.
Welcome, sir.
What's good, everybody? Welcome in to the chat and to the stream. I'm seeing you guys' comments on there. I'm the one that's usually moderating all this stuff in here, and I love seeing all the conversations that go on.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm pulling up this on my side. So we're going to cover Halsey first. Now, Halsey says that reportedly her new song is being blocked. There's a video that has already been completed, and there's a couple reasons why, and she's really upset about it. So over the weekend and through Monday, she was tweeting about her song being so good, and she's claiming that her label, Capitol Records, is blocking the release. And so she, I guess in her own kind of way, is calling for help, calling for some kind of justice. Because, as an artist, I definitely get that. It's very, very frustrating when you have something that you have created. But in the traditional relationship with record labels, you do not have that control.
Right.
And then, we're going to get into, well, why is that? So let's go over to, I'm looking at Billboard right now, and we'll just kind of quote a couple of things just to get you guys up to speed here. So when a fan insisted that Halsey just drop the tune herself, she explained that Capitol Records owns the master and that they're still under contract, which ties her hands. Now, a very common provision in these contracts is creative control and business decision making. So across the board, the record label is always going to have creative control and all business making and decision making, right? So in the instance that it comes to, what kind of producers are you going to work with? What kind of songs are you going to make? Some discretion is given to the artist, of course, so long as the artist is kind of doing well, quite frankly. And we find that, especially as artists start to creep outside the lines of what's more mainstream, which I believe Halsey has. And I would even compare Halsey a little bit to what you and I do, right? In the kind of dark pop realm.
Yeah, we're kind of on the outskirts of the same genre for sure.
Yeah, but she is pushing boundaries a little bit of that mainstream pop sound, which also we've heard, Billie Eilish is kind of doing that now too. But they're being successful with these releases. That's the difference. I think that if Halsey was releasing this music, it was a big flop, and maybe we could talk about one of her releases, right? She did a record with Trent Reznor.
Yeah, no, she did that. She did with and Atticus Rose, which was, I listened to it a few times. It's cool. I mean, I don't really mind Halsey, but I don't really follow her, so I really don't know tons about her. But I do know that, her complaint is the label wants her to create a TikTok that goes viral before they'll release the song. And so, which is kind of like a new thing that we're kind of hearing now that's going on, because it's TikTok is the new marketing tool for artists. It's the big marketing
And
tool
the
for
biggest
the big
marketing
right.
tool when it comes to music, right? I mean, YouTube obviously is an incredibly important platform when it comes to dropping music videos. But basically, what's happening here is that the record labels are seeing that there is a massive difference of building up hype, right? Having people kind of know the song, they have a taste of the song, you have something that goes viral, and then you drop the song, and then you drop the music video. So they're saying until that kind of viral moment happens, we don't want to drop the music. And so, of course, Halsey is upset with that. But on the business standpoint, I mean, it could literally be the difference of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the record label standpoint.
Well, I just think it's just kind of funny because well, she says that she did, deliver some like TikToks, and she did, did her thing that did kind of go viral and stuff. But there's different what are they going to be considering viral? Like, what is that benchmark that she needs to reach for it to be successful? Um and in contracts now, like, I wonder if she has, because all artists have to play the social media game. Like, you can't avoid it. If you are going to sell a record, if you're going to promote something, you have to use some form of social media. Like, if you're counting on print ads, there's really not even as many newspapers as there was, 10, 15 years ago, to get the word out. So you are relying on these tactics, and that's what's kind of music become. Especially because your music is being submitted to distributors, it's going to Instagram, it's going to TikTok, it's going to these things, so you can have an opportunity to have your song go viral. I mean, like you've mentioned before,
Yeah,
we've
but
seen
you have
countless
to,
artists.
but you have to be willing and to put in the work. And I say this for especially
Right.
independent artists. When it comes to, dropping a song, you should have no less than like 16 pieces of different creative content to promote that one, sound, that one song on your TikTok, and then, push that on all your other social media platforms. And something that Halsey is talking about, and she posted a TikTok over the weekend, and it said, "I'm tired." And she's
Mm.
just staring silently into the camera while a message filled the screen about her struggling to be heard. And she goes on to basically say that, the label's putting pressure on her to do more TikToks because they haven't hit that point. And so, in a way, it kind of sounds like they're calling on her as a partner, right? So, it's to say, you have to do your part. We're not willing to do these next steps with the release until we get to this marketing standpoint. Now, is that fair? Is that right? That's kind of part of the question of what we're discussing.
And if I'm looking at it, I can look at it from two different standpoints. Is it if it's I think you're going to see adjustments in the way that contracts are going to be written, towards artists, because I could argue is if I'm Halsey, I'm like, if I'm looking at, say again, like 10, 15, even 20 years ago, an artist would have to make a song, shoot a music video, do a bunch of interviews. A lot of those are actually like phone interviews, and go on tour. And that's how they would promote their music. That's all they would have to do it. Now artists are required to, right, be the song, do the music video, do the lyric video, do the visualizer, do all kinds of the press, what they have to do, go on tour, shoot live performance videos, shoot TikTok, social media, have all these posts done, photo shoots every day. Before, you'd wait to see your favorite artist in a magazine, like in an alternative press or a Rolling Stone magazine, and you'd get like, they would do like maybe what, 50 photo shoots a year, maybe, an artist or something like that. Now they're doing photo shoots, 6 days a week, creating
Yeah, but
content
the
every day.
and I agree with it, all of that. The game has completely changed, and the obligation of the artist has totally changed because labels are not taking on the obligation anymore to be responsible for the promotion, right? So it's
Exactly.
twofold. We're saying number one, not only does the artist need to get their ass in gear and go make some fucking TikToks, but additionally, that shit needs to hit, right? So we need to make sure that those pieces of content are doing well, and it's kind of a case study, right? Now, again, I'm prefacing all of this with the record label as the business partner. Contractually, they have the right to call all of
Yeah,
these
that's
shots.
you can't do anything
And I
about that.
can tell you, as an artist, that would drive me crazy, and that's why I'm an independent artist because I want to have that ability to control my
Right.
project. But that means I also don't have a record label behind me to potentially, once it is released, well, there's capital that's going to be infused into the promotion of that release.
So I guess my argument is and maybe how things could be seen differently in the future is an artist would end up getting more of a percentage, since they're actually in charge of all the marketing, and they're in charge of doing all these things, where they're still paying a marketing team to what, to manage the TikTok, to do the posts. She's still creating the content for these different things. And I argue at some point that's going to maybe even end up being part of like a looked at like in the way that 360 deals are done. Like, I'm arguing that my video content and my TikToks, are acting things and they're different than music. I don't got it all worked out in my head, but I'm just saying like there's something that's going to end up kind of happening for this, the way that artists have to work so much harder. And I agree with you, but to your point of being a signed artist or independent artist, if you're going to have to do all of that work anyway, why not just build up all your stuff independently
Yeah, and
and
look,
just do
guys,
your stuff?
I touch on this in that video that I released about being signed versus, staying
Great video.
independent, pros versus cons. But I mean, I agree with your point, and we find now that a lot of the deals that I do with record labels, they're the traditional record label deal. Label owns everything. It is 360 across the board, meaning the label's going to collect revenues from everything in the entertainment career, whether the label helps with that thing or not, like show
Right.
bookings and merchandise sales. But I am seeing kind of this transition, but also evolution of the process of more licensing deals. We see artists with bigger fan followings and more negotiation power coming in as partners and saying, label, no, I'm not going to give you rights to my music, but we'll co-own, or I will license to you exclusively for the next
Yes.
20 years. So there is an ability to kind of adjust the way that these deals are being done. But back to Halsey and kind of her frustration. So she is just kind of waiting for that green light, that go ahead. And so that's kind of why she is now taking to social media to discuss
Mhm.
this and update
And
her
getting
fans about it.
support. And getting support. She's getting support from Maren Morris. I feel the relevancy in the same. Either way, artists in a partnership with a label can listen to the algorithm, virality data, look at the charts, but when we get to criticize, it's one size fits all grip on our art. Also, we created the sound they're trying to make go viral. So I mean, and then she had Florence for Florence and the Machine backing her up. So FKA Twigs, Charlie XCX. So she has a lot of artists that are coming to her, backing her up and going, the record label. They just don't like the way that that their deals are structured, where the record label just has such control over the music that's being released. But that's the main thing that happens when you go sign your music to a record label. So like you can't be kind of shocked. Like what do you can't be mad at that when they're making the decisions when they made the other decisions that made you go viral. You got to trust the process, but at the same point, independent, building yourself up to where you have the ability to make those better deals, to negotiate those better deals, and then looking at these things like knowing ahead of time. So now, when you're paying attention to the industry, you're seeing this is going on. So if you have a contract in front of you in the next couple of months, make sure you hire an incredible entertainment attorney. You have them go explain to them, like, I'm nervous about if they're going to hold my music up because I don't have a viral TikTok video. Like, can
Well,
we
and
put
make
something
sure
in their
number
contract
one,
for that?
make sure you in fact have an entertainment attorney. It has to be someone who understands these
Absolutely.
deals specifically. But then number two, you need to make sure the attorney takes time to explain the entire contract to you, because I find that I do that for my clients. I'll spend an hour going through the contract and every nuanced, painful, headachy thing that needs to be discussed, that my artist is completely clear on what it is that they're giving up, what they're sacrificing in exchange for this deal. Now, on from LinkedIn, we had a comment. Each artist has a different marketing footprint strategy. Brian made his Instagram as one way to reach out to his biggest leverage seems to be live shows. You're both right. Yeah, so for a lot of artists, know the product, right? She's independent. She was signed with, a record label and was dropped from the record label, which was, as she says, the best thing that happened to her, because her career just kind of blew up after that when she decided to embrace who she was as an artist, as a person. But she had that experience of being signed with a label, and a part of what has been very successful for her are her live shows. She tours,
And
she sells out.
and an artist like like that LinkedIn profile brought up, Brian May is a legacy artist, being in Queen and all that kind of stuff. So he has his fan base is going to be is kind of locked in as well. So yeah, I agree that it's different marketing tactics for different artists. But at the end of the day, I guess my point is just when you sign to a label, you sign over the rights to make those decisions. So it's just like, I don't know what the complaining is about. You knew what you were doing ahead of time. Otherwise, or you didn't get an entertainment attorney that was good and can walk you through this thing. That's just my thing.
Yeah. No,
But I
and
feel it.
I understand that, but I definitely see from her standpoint,
Oh,
even
for
if she
sure.
was kind of on board with it at a certain point, you go, "I am really a partner in this. Why am I not being treated as a partner? And I don't have any decision making." So,
And
something will definitely continue,
well, I
to
just
come.
wanna just tag one thing on there.
Out.
I just wanna tag one more thing on there, just in a
Yeah.
relatability issue with us, right? So, we have Top Music Attorney, we have Miss Crystal stuff, we do TikToks, we do Instagram Reel, we do all the different, the regular videos and the content. So I could speak to it's exhausting doing all this content, and especially when you just kind of want to sing songs and you just want to perform and go on tour, and maybe you didn't necessarily think that was all that was going to be inclusive in your music career, but it is.
Yeah. All right. So one last question, real fast. Winston, I did see your other questions having to do with Johnny Depp, Amber Heard trial. We'll get to that when we get to the applicable segment. But your question was, if you have a client who's offered a Las Vegas residency, would you advise the artist to take that deal versus touring worldwide? It depends. Now, if they're being
Mhm.
offered a residency, typically that means you're at a certain point in the career, right? There is some kind of legacy portion of where you're at, and we want people to be able to come to you. Now, from what I hear, with clients that I've represented who do have these residency gigs, it's great for them. They don't have to tour. Touring can be a huge burden physically on, the performers. And
They
so
wanna
there
stay with their
are,
families.
and even with Lady Gaga, right? So she has had her residency as well. And, she's come out and talked about some issues, physical issues that she's had, and, and she has to deal with that. But I think the switch up in her show and how she does it and how much she, dances all plays into her quality of life and being a performer. So, good question. It really just depends on the
I would al
situation.
Well, that too, and I would also say the venue of, like, because I mean, just a residency in Vegas doesn't really mean anything. It depends where the venue is. Are you at a place where you will make money and you'll save a lot of money because you're not touring, so you don't have to pay a touring, crew. You don't have to build and erect stages everywhere. You have a set stage every night. So I'm sure it's a, very cost effective, and depending on how long the residency is, but I would say that that's what.
All right. So, I guess let's move on to the next story. So, we're going to talk about Stan Lee for a minute. Now, of course, Stan Lee, who passed in 2018, but co creator of massive franchises like Iron Man, Hulk, The Avengers, X-Men. We are talking a little bit about publicity rights today. Okay, so this is going to be kind of an interesting discussion because, again, Mr. Lee passed in 2018. He was in his 90s, but, 14 months leading up to his passing, he was still shooting.
Active, real active.
He was still shooting for future films that they were going to place him in, because he does this, what we call the producer. He gets his producer credit, right? So, like, Pharrell, we'll see Pharrell make an appearance in the music videos for his artist, and it's like a little cameo,
Yep.
and it has no relevancy to anything, but he just is in it for a second. That's the same thing with Stan Lee, and he has had, obviously, that little cameo appearance in a lot of his films. And so what basically has happened is that his estate, right, so meaning, the heirs of his fortune, assets, decided to license to Disney his publicity rights for the next 20 years. Okay, so the implications of what that actually means is that we will, of course, see Stan Lee again in many a films to come, but, Stan Lee on merchandise, Stan Lee at theme parks. I mean,
Yeah.
the
I
use is really endless.
and that's the thing. It's not just cameos. It's for whatever Marvel and then Disney wants to do for their theme parks, for their anything. There could be, they could have him saying whatever they want to have him saying. They own it all. And I've read online that some fans are just kind of like, let him just lie and let's not do it. But you have to kind of remember that, like, he seemed to be all for having his image and his being aware of being I'm Stan Lee and everything. I mean, he was working up to his death to make sure that he had, more cameos, original cameos and stuff. So I honestly think that he would be into this. But
Yeah, and guys, just to kind of explain where a little bit of the controversy and pushback is coming from, is that there are claims of, potential elderly abuse. Was he being kind of forced to do some of these things? Is this his family, that are exploiting him after he's already died, and they'll continue to now just use him, right? Use his name and likeness, and they're benefiting. And so is this really what he wanted versus is his memory being exploited. So that's kind of where the wrinkle in this is coming from. But to your
Maybe those can
point,
coexist. Maybe they both can be, you know what I mean? Like, because
right?
I always got that impression just from him, not even just in all of the the recent Marvel things that have come out, and just how Marvel's just really had this dominating effect since Iron Man came out. But I mean, even before that, he was very much in a I'm Stan Lee. I created these characters. This is what I do. Um, so I don't know. I think that he would want his legacy to live on. Maybe some of the particulars of where the money's not going to go, but it's going to go somewhere. So
Andy Hayward, CEO of Genius Brands, one of the two companies behind Stan Lee Entertainment, right? So the rights holder
yeah,
said that the deal really ensures that Stan, through digital technology and archival footage and other forms, will live in the most important venue, the Marvel movies and Disney theme park. Now, from what I understand, guys, it's really important when it comes to your wishes, right? In like a will or a trust.
right.
And it sounds like, of course, there was an assignment of these rights to Stanley Entertainment, right? And the heirs. And so I am getting the sense that this is kind of in line with his wishes. But the tough part is that at some point you just simply can't control it anymore. There are other people making these creative decisions. Would Stan Lee want to be in a particular type of film that's made, let's say, in 10 years, right? That's on a certain topic that he's against. There are things like that come up when I'm negotiating these deals for clients. And I say, look, if you are giving a perpetual, unlimited license to use your name and likeness for anything that this company wants, if your face shows up in a commercial for X, Y, and Z, are you going to be okay with that? And so we go kind of extreme sometimes with these examples because these things happen.
Absolutely. And that's interesting. And but that's why you have to have contracts. That's why you have to have contracts with your actors. What if there's a scene in the movie that upon reflection they didn't like and they want to be, all of a sudden be taken off the movie or don't want to associate with it? Well, it's a good thing you have that contract in. You know what I mean? Or I don't know. Like it's I personally am glad that he is still gonna be represented and shown. I'm into Stanley. I'm into that whole thing.
If you had all the capital in the world, then what? Well, I think that goes nicely with, Stan Lee's legacy, right? And I, you and I were talking about this yesterday, and that very successful people commonly, when they get a little bit older, when asked what's the most valuable thing, what's the most important thing in your whole life, and they say, if you could have anything, what would it be? And they would always say, I want the time back. I want to be
Right.
the 30-year-old. I want to be the 40-year-old and going through this adventure again and going and hustling, no matter if it's good or bad, but kind of going through the journey. And so I think that if you had all these successes and all of this money at some point, that doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the moments, it's the people, and it's the time that you have and how you spend it. And in fact, let's see, what was Stan Lee worth? Let's see what the internet has to say. 50 million to 80 million. I feel like that's low. That can't be right. I mean, he was sitting happy either way, but I think that's probably a little low. So in any case, a very interesting, discussion, because again, when we go to right of publicity, we're talking about the unauthorized commercial use of someone's name, likeness, and various attributes, right? So it might be a certain saying that someone says, which goes into trademark laws. But the point just being that we can attribute certain things to certain people and that they have the right to control that, right? So people will ask me sometimes, I'll get calls from clients and they'll say, well, what if I adapt, a cartoon? And that cartoon is based on this person. Is that okay? Well, if you don't have permission, the answer is no, because of publicity rights. So that's all kind of entailed here in this.
And if you don't want that, get your will right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, guys. And so, when it comes to what happens with everything once you pass, if you don't have a will, if you don't have what's called a trust, you don't have a way defining what happens with everything, then it goes to
Prince.
laws. Yeah, right.
If you're Prince.
100%. If you are Prince and you don't have a will, I know the attorney who handled his estate and just the chaos of what it was afterwards, because you had all these people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, I'm an heir, I'm a child. But anyway, get something in writing for sure. All right, so let's move on. Guys, I had a weird moment this morning I got to share with you. So I normally don't wake up confused as to where I am, or if that didn't happen, that would have happened like a decade ago, maybe. But I woke up this morning. I was very, what's the word, discombobulated. And I
That's
was
work.
very confused as to where I was. I thought it was the weekend for some reason. I'm like, why is my alarm going off? Why is it the crack of dawn? I don't know if that happens to anyone, but then I just had this weird sense overall, like for the rest of the day.
Did you know what day it was? Do you know what day
I
it is right now?
eventually figured it out because after I'd been up for a few hours, I saw on my schedule that I had an interview, which almost gave me a heart attack because you got to prep for an interview. So it all worked out, and we're all here, which is great. All right, so why don't we move into the next story? We are talking about Kanye. All
Yeah,
right,
so
so
this is
Mr.
kind of
Kanye.
this is kind of weird. This is kind of weird because I'm not even 100% clear about this. So, I go through my feed, you know what I mean? And I see Kanye has posted this picture of this McDonald's, which is a box. I didn't really know what it was. And then he was talking about how there's a McDonald's collab. He posted it with the Ye teams up with industrial engineer to reimagine McDonald's packaging. And I was looking and I found articles about it, but like I don't know, is this like official? Is this for fun? Because I haven't seen like a statement from McDonald's, but I think that the timing is kind of weird. But so this is going on.
Now, what I can say is that if Kanye is posting and giving the impression that he is doing a collaboration, he can get into a lot of trouble. And guys, that's why we talk about this as it relates to using different trademarks, right? So brand identifiers like logos, like names. If you put, Nike in your music video, be careful because you might be giving the impression that Nike has sponsored you. If Nike hasn't, you're going to get a cease and desist and you're going to get into some trouble. So obviously, if he's not in fact doing some kind of collaboration with them, then that could lead to some potential issues of McDonald's being like, we don't want to be associated with this guy. But assuming that there is some kind of forthcoming, what do you think of the packaging? I have a couple thoughts, but let's start with you.
Well, let me just say, like, in regards to just, the timing of it, just with all the controversy that's going on with Kanye West lately and in the press and stuff, it just seems weird to be that McDonald's would do this. Not that I'm suggesting any kind of cancellation of Kanye West. I love Kanye West. Let's get it absolutely clear on that. I just thought that it was just kind of like odd. Like that's what just made me go, it's kind of, I don't really buy it. But they do, they do have done collaborations with Sweetie and J Balvin and Travis Scott and BTS. So it's not unheard of. I mean, this would be if this was happening, that'd be awesome. Like I think that'd be awesome. I know Pusha T. He used to do the McDonald's song. He had the jingle, the ba da ba ba ba, and then he jumped shipped over to Arby's. So maybe McDonald's is looking for But then Ye did the Pusha T's record, produced half of his new record. So they're on other teams. I don't know.
Well, and so this is supposedly a collaboration with, and you want to take over or take away those overlays, but
Oh yeah.
Naoto Fukasawa. And so he's a product designer. And if you go to his website, I'll see, maybe I can get this a little bigger for you guys. But, if you go through the website, you get a little description of him. But then also, let's look at some of his stuff. And we'll go to clients. No, that's not it. But he has a great deal of work product that he's done, right? So I was just kind of curious what kind of things. And so he has like furniture. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Projects. All right. So we have electronics, furniture, bathroom, lighting, architectural, car, accessories. So, and I also saw this, right? So I was wondering, did this have anything to do with the device, right, that Kanye came out for his music listening
Let me see.
experience? So obviously that's not what this is. This is a what would you call it? A landscape piece, a rock for the backyard.
It does look similar.
There you go.
It is
There
a
you go.
similar shape.
So anyway, it is in collaboration, with this designer. So I'm taking it as likely something official, but we do need to see additional releases. But for Kanye, this could be great because he was banned from Instagram. He finally is back on, and that was following, what some were claiming as cyberbullying, right, having to do with Kim Kardashian, Pete Davidson. And there was a lot that we saw. I don't know if you guys were following, but he was on a many a days going on, a posting rampage.
Yeah, no, it was I was getting out of control. I'm like, "You gotta mellow out, yay. You gotta bring it down a notch. You gotta bring it down a notch." But, could this be just like an art it could just be like an art project, you know what I mean? Maybe it's just like for art. But I did think that it kinda looked kind of interesting, it looked kinda cool. It just
Yeah,
seemed just the
bring
whole
the picture
thing.
back on.
Yeah,
So
let
I'll
me
give you
see it.
some thoughts, right? So as far as I thought obviously the trademark, big M on the packaging, but also from the texture of what it looks like, it almost looks like wax paper, right? Or
Mm,
rice paper.
oh,
Now,
I see
as
what you're
far
saying.
as I
Like
haven't
if
I
there's like
haven't
a
purchased anything from McDonald's in a long time. I don't know if they make the sandwiches quite square like that. They're usually like more hamburger style, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but that stood out to me.
Yeah, no, I think it's just like, they're regular cartons and stuff, the boxes, they just kind of flip up. So I just assume that it's just that kind of box or whatever. But yeah, fun. I don't know. Either way, kind of fun, kind of interesting. It's good to see something from Ye that's that's not not threatening somebody online.
All right, so let's move on, guys. We're gonna hit one more news story, and then we're gonna go into the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial updates. And there's a lot that we have to unpack. So this one is having to do with Nirvana and specifically Kurt Cobain. Smells like Teen Spirit guitar auction, which was auctioned off for nearly $5 million.
Yeah.
Now we have heard of different, the sale of like one of his shirts was over $300,000. I mean, there have been various things that have been auctioned off previously, but nothing that I have heard of
They
in any
they
case. In
estimated it looks like at 600,000. So that's quite higher than the estimate.
Right, so the estimate for the sale of the guitar, but then we
Yeah.
landed just shy of 5 million. And so this is a Fender Mustang electric guitar. And Kurt, I guess in one of his last interviews, he specifically talks about the fact that he was left-handed. And so he's like, being a guitar player, I've only had two guitars that I've ever, played. And I'm, of course, this is one of those. And so someone is very happy and made a good investment, I think.
Yeah, no, it's definitely iconic. The video obviously is one of the most important music videos that's ever been in rock music. I mean, Nirvana is such an important band, and this was such a turning point for them in their career and for music in general. Because I mean, you got to remember when this song came out, there was still like hair metal bands, and there was still this going on. And then Nirvana came in with a completely different attitude. Now this wasn't their first release, but this is the first release that they had that really caught fire.
Right.
And yeah, and it literally changed music. That hair metal kind of went away, and everybody wanted to be kind of like Nirvana and this grunge sound. And you got the Soundgardens and the Alice in Chains and things. So, I don't know. I think it's a pretty cool thing to have. Now, if I had, I mean, I would have to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to spend $4.5 million on something like this, but it's definitely cool.
Yeah, so the guitar was sold to Jim Irsay Collections of Indianapolis in a bidding war amongst collectors from all over the world who participated in the online and over the phone auction. And the guitar was sold for 4.5 million. And then I also want to just see here because there were a couple other things that again have been auctioned off, but guys, this kind of goes to legacy
He's the
assets.
Colts owner too.
What was
I just
that?
want to throw that out. He's the Colts owner of the football team. He owns the Colts, though, so he definitely has some money.
Well, and just when it comes to the value of kind of what you do, specifically as an artist, especially as you go along in your career, right? So, for example, I've done these deals for the acquisition of masters, and that's the thing that we're talking about. That's why Halsey is so upset with her record label because the record label owns the masters for her music, makes all the decisions, and and that's kind of what is agreed to in the contract. So when it comes to the different things that can be sold off later, the masters themselves become even more valuable the more time that goes on. And unfortunately, even after an artist passes, right? Because now we have a collection of works that can be sold. And, right now, the desire of investors to purchase catalogs seems to be going up. And so, we kind of we've now seen an extension of that to now clothing, right? And a guitar. And so I think that, for most artists, keep your wardrobe from your music
Absolutely.
Keep
We definitely have quite a collection of a lot of your props from your music videos and, just out of habit. I mean, I'm kind of a pack rat anyway, but you just never know when something's going to hit, when something retroactively is going
Thanks
to
for
hit.
checking in.
And, I just think that, yeah, just definitely keep a hold of, maybe not everything, but you should definitely keep a hold of some important iconic things from some of your videos if you're an artist.
Yeah, and just remember that you never know where your career is going to go, right? So if you're an actor, if you are a writer, anything that you kind of touch in your creative life, you never know what's going to happen. And so it's a good idea just to keep a hold of everything. And don't just give stuff away, right? So that goes back to the music. Don't just sign away your music to the label. Don't just be like, yeah, of course, you can own everything for the next 10 years of my life because hey, you might make me a star. Because when they don't make you a star, things don't end well. So I think that's probably everything that I have for this story. But oof, nice sales price.
Yeah, very good. And I just want to say thanks to everybody that is on the stream right now. Make sure that you're hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you're watching from another platform, we are currently streaming out from like 5 different platforms. So make sure you head over to YouTube, Top Music Attorney, and subscribe. Thanks for having me
Very
on, Chris.
nice. Thank you for being here, that Orco. We will see you next time. All right, guys. So before we get into the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial, boy, do we have a lot to update. So, again, and per usual, make sure you have any questions or comments, drop those in the chat. And what we're probably going to do is, not only are we going to hit the live stream again, I think we're going to do 7 p.m. PST tomorrow, but as far as just kind of keeping you guys apprised of what's happening in the trial, because we are in our last week of trial. I can't believe that this much time has gone by. And I've been watching this trial every single day. And so, there's been a ton happening. And, one of the biggest things is that Amber Heard's case in chief finally rested, right? So, just meaning we're done with Amber Heard's witnesses, and we've moved now into what's called rebuttal, right? So now Johnny Depp's team has the opportunity to jump back up, and they're putting up a lot of witnesses to to come and rebut what we heard from Amber's side. So let's get a little tea. I see some more people filing in right now. Hello, hello. And let's get into it. All right, so we're going to start with day 20. So now this is the last 2 days. If you guys missed our coverage from the prior days, we have a playlist. I'll be sure to link that down below. We will also time code everything so you can kind of watch this later on. But we heard from Dr. Richard Moore, and he was the orthopedic surgeon. All right, so as far as the fact that we're hearing from the orthopedic surgeon, he testified having to do with the finger injury. Now, this is a witness on behalf of Amber Heard, and we're talking about the loss of Johnny Depp's finger, or the tip of it, which was in Australia, March of 2015. Now, what we heard him testify to was that allegedly, Johnny Depp's finger must have, and the only way that he could have sustained the injury that this expert reviewed was via the slamming of a door, like a sliding glass door. And the reason that this kind of, at least for me, made me perk up a little bit is because that's a little inconsistent, right? When have we heard in this trial thus far that anyone is alleging that Johnny Depp's finger got smashed in a sliding door? And in fact, this is the third explanation that we've heard from Amber Heard's team having to do with what happened. If in fact Johnny Depp's finger was not decapitated from his hand via the throwing of a vodka bottle, which is what Johnny Depp is claiming, then what happened? So Mr. Moore, he is claiming that this was from a sliding door, but then we also heard from Amber, and Amber had testified that Johnny had smashed a kind of vintage phone in the bar area and that he had done it to himself. And right, so it was more of an accident, or kind of, more in some, drunken haze, that had been her testimony. And then we heard a third time from her attorneys that Johnny Depp, in fact, cut it off himself. And if you remember, that was a lot earlier in this trial, right? And so this had been when they were talking about the fact that Johnny Depp was using a lot of drugs, he was abusing alcohol. And so perhaps in this drunken, crazed rage, he had in fact cut off his own finger. Okay, so this is problematic because just from Amber Heard's side of the case. We've now heard 3 different variations of the story. And the hope is that as you kind of build your case, you want to build and you want to have witnesses that will, or in this case, experts who will back up your story and will reinforce that throughout your case. And so, in some instances, let's say with Johnny Depp's case, we've heard that, right? We've heard things having to do with his type of personality and how he handles fights and conflict, great. But the fact that we've had some inconsistent testimony is not very good. And it's 3 factual theories of how Johnny Depp lost his finger. All right, so let's go back really fast because we are now in muddied water when it comes to the issue of his finger. But Balaban channel. Thank you. We are checking on that right now. All right, we're back. That's right. So we have done things. We have songs. If you want to listen to my music, it's Miss Crystal. Thank you very much. He plays guitar. Why hurt your finger? If your escape is playing music. So that was Johnny Depp's explanation as to why he could not have cut off his finger, or why he would not have cut off his finger. So I think, at least at the point that we heard Johnny Depp testify, he thought that Amber Heard was sticking with he cut off his finger, and that's why obviously Johnny Depp focused on that. And he just said, which I thought was a believable explanation of, I wouldn't have done that in a drunken, crazed rage or otherwise, because playing music is so important to me and it's very cathartic. And for me to not have a finger to play my guitar would be essentially a nightmare. So we did hear from Mr. Moore, and then on cross, Camille did get him to admit that he had misstated his position, because there had been a discussion in regards to how could, for example, with the sliding glass door, how could the finger have been removed? And Mr. Moore had alleged, well, if Amber threw a bottle, that simply could not have taken off the tip of the finger because of the positioning of the hand. And specifically stating that the finger or the fingers had been flat, the position of the hand was facing down, but then he, on that cross-examination admitted that he had kind of misstated. And Johnny Depp's hand had been on the counter with his fingers curled. And so there were some inconsistencies. And the purpose of showing those inconsistencies in the cross-examination is because it makes your expert look like either he doesn't know his facts or he was wrong. So, the good thing is that Camille, at the end of all of this, finally got him to admit that he couldn't possibly rule out every single potential way that a finger can be cut off or decapitated from your hand, and that potentially could include the throwing of a vodka bottle. All right, so then we heard from Dr. David Spiegel. He's a psychiatrist, and were things getting fiery in the court over this particular expert, because it got a little hot. I'm going to explain why. So he's a psychiatrist, and he's an expert in substance abuse and intimate partner violence. But unfortunately, as he was kind of giving his testimony, and especially when we got into cross-examination, he started getting a little arrogant and condescending in the way that he was, speaking to the attorney doing the cross-examination. And then also he was kind of, plugging his book in the middle of trial. And, while he may have just been, I don't even know what he was thinking, it just doesn't come off very well. A part of getting the jury to really listen to you is that believe you, is that maybe you come off likable, you come off honest and transparent. And so some of these things maybe weren't playing well for him, but it doesn't mean that his testimony is going to be completely discounted. So he went on to talk about these different elements of a narcissistic personality disorder, and eventually got to the point of saying basically that Johnny Depp is a narcissist, and assigning almost a diagnosis. But the critical thing here is that, Mr. Spiegel has never actually examined Johnny Depp. Okay, so that was kind of an ouchie that ended up coming up on the cross-examination, right? So how can you possibly give a psychiatric, we're not doing just kind of a medical evaluation based on medical records, but a psychiatric evaluation when you have not actually examined a person? Now, something that stood out to me is that on the cross-examination, the attorney went in on him and specifically cited to different ethical rules for psychiatrists and psychiatrists who testify. And getting into, for example, here's the rule that talks about you really want to do an examination of the person yourself before giving a diagnosis. And on that cross examination, saying, well, isn't it unethical then? Haven't you violated the rules for your own board? And he kept dancing around the issue until, finally he just said, well, that would be ridiculous. No, of course I can get up here and give my expert testimony, even if I haven't observed someone, in person. But I still think that the cross examination was very effective for just showing that for you to make a psychiatric diagnosis, that's problematic and potentially unethical based on the own rules for your practice. And he seemed to be kind of walking it back. And when challenged, he would just say, well, this isn't a diagnosis. I'm not diagnosing him per se. So again, that goes back to the credibility issue. If someone gives foundational testimony to say, this is the facts, and this is my expert opinion based on all of my years, and then the attorney comes back in and says, well, aren't you literally violating your own ethical conduct rules? That doesn't look great. But something else he was getting into in that direct examination was talking again about Johnny Depp's drug and alcohol use. This has just been beaten over and over and over. And Johnny Depp's team already kind of drew the sting on this, right? So in his direct examination, they had said, hey, don't you use a lot of drugs? Hey, don't you drink a lot? And it's good to draw the sting because you just acknowledge it and you say, yes, it's a fact. But did that mean that you end up becoming an abuser? And then Johnny Depp says no. And then we hear evidence from his witnesses and his experts to say that just because you drink alcohol and take drugs, it doesn't make you an abuser, essentially. So conversely, we heard Mr. Spiegel kind of saying the opposite thing and saying that, someone who has abusive tendencies is at a higher risk of engaging in that kind of conduct if they are taking a lot of drugs and drinking a lot of alcohol. And so, kind of, again, without having ever conducted some kind of direct examination, just kind of jumping to the conclusion, therefore, Johnny Depp must be an abuser. Okay, so again, on cross-examination, he definitely got beat up a little bit, and there were some very awkward moments that have now been, cut up into clips and are going viral on social media, unfortunately for him. But he just ended up looking very foolish, for basically just correlating a statistical fact to a case, and specifically this case, and coming to that kind of conclusion, not based on very much at all. So then he also got into the memory stuff, and I thought this was kind of interesting because he's talking about the fact that Johnny Depp, I guess, would wear in-ears when he's acting, right? And so he goes, well, if you're abusing alcohol and you're drinking a lot, it ends up impairing your memory over time. And also there might be a portion of it that, you're just getting older. Mr. Depp, I think he's almost 60, but specifically because of all of this abuse, he can't remember his lines and he's having to be fed those lines. Now, we did hear conflicting testimony right after that, having to do with the fact that I guess Johnny Depp actually just likes to listen to music. And so that's why he had the in-ears, and it wasn't for purposes of feeding him lines. So again, that's the purpose of now we're kind of getting into the battle of the experts. We have Amber Heard's expert saying Johnny Depp does these things, and that's something that we can attribute to someone who maybe will become violent, become abusive, and also he's being forgetful and all the stuff is happening. And then we have another expert who comes in and says, no, that's all wrong, and here's why. So it was definitely a very fiery moment with this particular expert. And I think that, when you start on a very high note and you're coming off a little bit arrogant and condescending, and then you get backed into a corner, the fall is very far. All right. And then lastly, as it relates to the end of, this was day 20. All right. So we have day 20. We had Catherine Arnold. So Catherine Arnold was Amber's Hollywood expert, and she came in to testify having to do with damages, right? And so what Ms. Arnold came in and she's discussing, it was twofold. Number one, Johnny Depp's damages, and saying that it's a result of Johnny's actions or inactions, right? So meaning him being tardy, showing up drunk, not showing up to set at all, or the fact that he has filed defamation lawsuits against other people and there's just bad press. So any kind of loss of reputation at this point is his fault. So that was kind of the first point she made. Number two, she went on to say Amber could have made up to $45 million if the statements that Johnny Depp's attorney made about her, right? So this was having to do, separately, and I believe is in connection with the UK case, but the statements that Johnny Depp's attorney made that were derogatory in nature were the reason that she ended up losing all of these great opportunities. And so Miss Arnold said that valuation that she had made was for $45 million of lost opportunity. Now we got to hear this. We got to have Amber Heard's experts saying that there, in fact, is a large sum of money that Amber has lost, right? And that she's actually been damaged because if Amber Heard, let's say, is successful on her claims, well, in order to get paid, she has to prove what those amounts are. So at some point, we did need to hear that there had been damages. Now, a part of the conversation here is, well, what did she lose? Because we have heard testimony previously having to do with the fact that she, was picked up for that Aquaman 2, right? That she did have a L'Oreal contract for $1 million. And so that things have still continued. But the testimony was basically to say that she has not felt the success or received the success after a big blockbuster movie, right? And they were saying, it's the biggest DC movie of all time. That's great. And so they're saying comparatively, she should be doing a lot better than she is, and any loss as a result of Johnny Depp, right? Or I should say the statements that his attorney made. Now, Miss Arnold was making comparisons to Jason Momoa, Zendaya, Chris Pines, and the problem as she was making some comparisons to these maybe more well-established actors who have a very extensive filmography is just simply that. Amber Heard does not have the filmography that they do. And so to say as a one-to-one comparison, and just to simply say it, right? She was not actually comparing, let's say, I reviewed the contracts for, these actors. This is what they got paid on their movies before they did a big comic book TV show. This is what Amber was getting paid. They're similarly situated. This is what happened to them after the big comic book movie, and this is what happened to Amber. We actually didn't hear anything to that effect. We just simply heard references to other names and her just simply saying without foundation, because these actors are going to be paid this many millions of dollars. Amber should as well. She hasn't. So therefore, those are her damages. Now, let me take a section and go back. Let me just take a little beat here. I'm going to go to the comments. Sorry, you guys. I don't want to be ignoring you. Thank you very much for the super chat. Love your show and music. I appreciate you. We will be back. We're going to do another live stream tomorrow, 7 p.m. PST. All right, here we go. Stokely, I have been getting a narcissistic vibe from Amber being in the hot box. Yeah, there weren't any questions having to do with these traits that the psychiatrist was discussing. And I was wondering that if on cross that would come up just to say, are some of these traits maybe attributable to Amber? And what we've heard thus far, it didn't come up, but I was hoping that it would. Thank you very much. There's no psychiatrist. There's the actor, Christopher Lloyd of Back to the Future. All right, so getting into, day 21. So today they started off, we had a motion to strike. So we knew this was coming. So a motion to strike Amber's counterclaim in its entirety. So this was a motion that was filed by Johnny Depp's team just to say, Your Honor, because of all the evidence and everything that we have heard, we moved to strike Amber's testimony. And then, the judge basically came back and said, well, this is a matter and a decision for the fact finder, which is the jury. So the judge, in fact, did end up denying that motion, which is not surprising, just because there's still much that needs to be deliberated on and decided by the jury. I think Amber Heard's legal team have had some good moments. I think in the questioning and the legal arguments, there have been some good moments, but there have been some ouch moments as well. And that has to do with Amber Heard's own testimony and the fact that we saw, some trip ups by her counsel, particularly on not only direct, but on redirect as well. All right, so let's go into the first witness that we saw of today, Mr. David Kolber. Now, he's a plastic and hand surgeon. He's also the one who operated on Johnny Depp. He testified to things like Johnny Depp's cast that he wore was not fully hardened, and there was kind of soft components to it to allow for swelling that would occur. And, a good portion of the discussion just had to do with, could Johnny Depp, for example, have, physically assaulted Amber Heard, which is a part of this? Could he have punched her? Could he have even formed a fist? So we did hear testimony from the doc having to say, the answer is no, you couldn't form a fist, but he additionally went a step further to say, well, if you had used, for example, the hand in a way that collided with something, that the cast itself would have been damaged. He didn't observe that the cast had been damaged, so that was kind of pretty quick. But we got into Richard Marx. So I gotta hang on Richard Marx for a sec, because Richard Marx is the OG entertainment attorney that came in, and we've heard from Richard previously, but he came in and gave some testimony again to rebut the prior expert witness for Amber, Miss Arnold, right? So Miss Arnold came in and gave her testimony having to do with Amber's alleged damages. And Mr. Richards then rebutted basically all of that. And he basically had, not a lot of nice things to say. He basically said the analysis provided had no basis. It was not credible. And in fact, the expert did not have knowledge of how these deals worked. And he goes, look, I've been in this industry, I think he said for 50 years. He goes, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've done every single kind of deal that you can possibly imagine. I know how these things work. And so he provided a lot of foundation to explain to the jury why there are some challenges in believing the testimony from Amber Heard's expert. So, for example, he talked about the fact that we're not really talking about a loss of opportunities, specifically when it comes to things like Aquaman, right? So if Amber Heard is not picked up for Aquaman 3, you can't kind of look at it as a loss, right? So that she would have lost $4 million, which is what we heard, because he goes, the studio holds what are called options, and options are held by the studio. So if the studio wants you to be in the film, they'll exercise the option. It becomes a binding contract. It's done. But if the studio says, I don't want to exercise that option, then that's its right. And we talk about that a lot, even with record label deals as well. And we talk about the fact that record labels hold options for artists and additional albums. And so he provided at least some foundation to explain to the jury why the testimony was problematic, but he also went a step further. And he goes, to the extent that she is comparing Amber Heard to these other more established actors, she has not actually provided anything that we can look at, as far as, for example, a chronology of the films that these other actors had done prior to being in the big comic book movie, right? What were they getting paid then? What was the jump after? What were the, pay rates after the big comic book movie? And so he goes, because we can't kind of sit down and look at these things side by side, which, by the way, is how we do these deals. And I can attest to this, right? So when I'm doing these film deals and we are negotiating rates for the actors, we have to be able to base it on something. And I say, oh no, my actor is entitled to this amount of money, and here's why. And we can compare it to this other person who had a similar role who was paid this amount. So therefore we are entitled to no less than this amount. So I think he did a very good job of not only explaining the issues that he had, but to really rebut her credibility and to say that, essentially the jury should just disregard everything that she had to say. And then we heard from Mike Spindler, who, again, he's a forensic accountant, but he came in and basically said the same thing. He goes, to the extent that we are trying to take the testimony from Amber's expert Hollywood damages person, you can't, because it's based on absolutely nothing. But let's get in real quick and talk about the hashtag discussion. Guys, I don't know if you saw this, but earlier in the trial, one of Amber Heard's witnesses was a forensic social media analyzer, and he came in and did a bunch of, or provided a bunch of graphs that we could look at having to do with applicable hashtags. And the time that these hashtags were used, the ones that were supposedly negative towards Amber Heard and trying to create a connection with the statements made by Johnny Depp's attorney to say that, well, it's because of these statements that Amber Heard's reputation was squandered, and then she never was able to get another film, and her career has, basically tanked since then. So that's what Amber Heard's expert was discussing. But a part of my thought process is, why are we talking about this? Why would Amber Heard want this to be on the forefront of the jury's mind? Because remember, the jury through this entire process has not been able to get on social media. They can't watch anything. They can't see anything. They can't do anything. They have to basically, be cavemen for 7 weeks. So they don't have the benefit of seeing everything that we get to see, right? So we get to see clips and playbacks, and we get to see conflicting other interviews and footage and all this stuff that's been circulating. But by introducing this evidence, it shows what the public opinion is, and that the court of public opinion is heavily on Johnny Depp's side. And so, for example, there was just kind of this reiteration of these different hashtags. And, I think one of them is Amber Turd. Another is Justice for Johnny. So, as it relates to this testimony, we have to just kind of take into account, does this really help to move the case along? And for every witness that we heard, not only for Amber Heard's team, but for Johnny Depp's team, that's the purpose. That's what we're trying to do as the attorneys, right, for these parties. We're trying to help guide the jury to the conclusion that we need them to make. So it's a little concerning to me why, for example, you would have an expert that's going to talk about the fact that everyone just loves Johnny Depp. I don't think that helps anything. And also the fact that you are having, hashtag Amber Turd reiterated over and over and over several days. That's just obviously going to kind of spark fires again online. So for me, kind of wish that was left out. I don't think that's good for either side, but here we are. And then also, and I think I misspoke. So it's Doug Banya that I'm speaking of. So Mr. Banya, he also said, as it relates to the different graphs that we were looking at, 35% of the tweets were prior to the statements that Johnny Depp's attorney made. So a good chunk of change of all these negative derogatory statements seemed to be resulting after this UK lawsuit had been filed. So it was not, in fact, related to the statements made by Johnny Depp's attorney, and that only about 2% of those negative hashtags were, in fact, used after the statements were made by Johnny Depp's attorney. Let's go back over to the chat. Has anyone testified that she is not a very good actress? Well, actually, we did hear from her acting coach a few days ago, and I think this was into last week, but we heard from the acting coach that Amber has a hard time crying. And that was something that we kind of discussed, as just to say, her acting coach herself had said Amber has a hard time crying, and her crying is very different to when she cries kind of in real life. And, to the extent that we think that maybe there's been some embellishment or crocodile tears happening as she's trying to express her story, be it true or not, that kind of makes it difficult to buy into what she's saying. So to an extent, yes, we have heard having to do with the acting. And again, back to we as the public have had the opportunity to see a lot of stuff that other people haven't seen. And, even for me, I saw a clip that, as the internet does, someone had found old footage of Amber crying. And it was, something having to do with, there was someone chasing her. And so she was talking to someone on a couch and she was crying to them. And it was just very similar to what we've seen with her on the stand. So in any case, there is a ton that is still happening. And, we still obviously have a few days to go. So what's going to happen is that we are in the rebuttal phase. Amber Heard's team has blown through their time. You have a limited amount of time in order to get through your case in chief. And each side has the same amount of time. So, as it was, I believe, yesterday, Johnny Depp's team had 8 hours more left than Amber Heard. So Amber Heard has officially rested her case. She has a few hours left at this point in order to kind of get some questions in for these witnesses that are coming back up on Johnny Depp's behalf. And then both sides have 2 hours for closing. So that is going to be the same. But I think obviously what's going to happen is that at some point, Amber Heard's team's not going to be able to ask questions anymore. And it's just going to be Johnny Depp's team kind of taking this to the finish line. All right. So guys, No, you're right. See, American King, we were just talking about that. The motion to strike was denied, and that will be something that is left to the jury. We kind of went a little bit long today, but I really wanted to be sure to kind of give you guys a full update. So if you are watching this later, we will be sure to add chapters, but make sure to come over on social media, do all the YouTubey things. Be sure to like the video and leave a comment. It really helps to tell the YouTube gods to push out the content so other people can join our community. I appreciate you guys being here. Come over to Top Music Attorney on all social media platforms. Thank you again for those of you who did a super chat. I love your faces, and I will see you on the next one. I'm Top Music Attorney, Miss Crystal.